the microphone.
My name is Ladine King, and I'm 45, and I'm Harry's daughter. And I'm talking to Harry's sister, Ruby, my Aunt Ruby. And the first question I asked her was, do I have to keep this on?
No, I think just
Okay.
check on it and then you're good.
Okay. Oh, I'll hear how well I can hear Ruby. Okay. So my first question was, did you like to go fishing?
Yes, of course I did. But I didn't get to go very often because the boys all got to go.
Did you ask to go and they told you you couldn't go, or they just didn't invite you?
They probably just didn't invite me. And then I'd cry sometimes when I couldn't go.
So what would your mom say to you about that?
I don't know.
We were just wondering if we could talk to you about it.
I don't know that she said anything about it, but go quit crying. Because you get over it. That's about all she'd
Did you
ever
know
said.
that was going on, Walter?
Somewhere, in the back of my mind, yes, we would know. We would know she was a girl and probably wouldn't get to go because there was a limited number.
People could go on that boat, too.
And so boys got preference.
For sure.
Well,
I guess that changed by the time I came along because I didn't know that.
Oh, really? You got to go?
I got to go. Nobody told me I couldn't go.
Okay.
Did your mother ever go fishing?
Very, very seldom. Didn't when it was.
Sit here.
The kid one? Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm gonna blind into it. Thank you guys. Okay, bye-bye.
She didn't like to go, and she didn't like the boat, and she didn't like all our efforts and money into fishing. But she loved the fish we would bring back.
you're talking about Mother Martha.
No,
Martha.
Martha. No, Martha. And yeah,
Did Agnes go fishing?
some.
Really?
So y'all had a boat when Agnes was alive too?
No, but Dad always could find somebody with a boat he could go out with.
Did Ruby get to go out in the boat?
They took me out in the baby carriage in a storm. They thought I was going to go overboard. That was out from. We went out in. Well, I don't remember, but they told me that I was in the Eby's boat. What was their name?
Clyde Eby?
No, his father. Elsie. I can't think of what his name is.
Anyway, he was a brother preacher.
Yeah,
Paul Eby.
Paul Eby.
So Paul Eby had a boat,
Yep.
Yeah,
and they took you out there in a.
in a baby carriage.
Your mother, Agnes, and Amos.
Yes.
And you in a baby carriage.
Yeah, I guess Walter and Elmer were probably along too. And it really got rough, and the baby carriage just, even with the brakes on, just wanted to roll, is what they said. They were afraid I was going to go overboard. But I didn't. I'm still here.
You lived to tell the story.
Yeah.
So they never tied a rope to you to keep you from
No,
going
that
to
was
sea?
that was Miriam.
And she
Okay.
did fall overboard.
Whose story is that to tell?
You talking about me?
You're telling Miriam's Well, she can't tell the story. She was just a baby that they had a rope tied around.
Probably heard the story enough to tell it.
I bet Uncle Walter remembers it.
I wasn't along, but
I wasn't either.
Well, who was there?
Dan.
All right, we gotta get somebody write that down. Dan's gotta do it.
He's younger.
Well, Mimi, have you heard it enough to tell it?
Probably I wrote an autobiography in high school.
Is that picking her up?
Here,
Nope.
do you want to be here, Mimi? Sit there because we're getting you on tape. Did you already tell the story, Ruby?
No.
She was telling the story of when she was in a baby carriage.
Oh, really?
Paul Eby's boat.
Do we hold it?
No,
You can
because
set it now.
Okay. Hello, I'm Miriam Elizabeth King, and when I was about 18 months old, the way I heard the story, of course I don't remember. My mom and dad took out some Bible school teachers fishing in one of the inlets in Chincoteague, going to Chincoteague. And whenever we go by there, they show me which one it is, but I couldn't explain it to you. And evidently my mom was pregnant with Dan. He would have been born in December, and this was like in the summer before. And so she was nervous, and I was jumping all around the boat trying to get in the water. And so somebody said, I'm a Pisces, by the way, and I've loved the water since I can remember. And so somebody finally got the bright idea to tie a rope around my waist so they didn't have to watch me so closely. And I guess after they tied the rope on my waist and tied it to one of the seats or something, and they didn't watch me very closely, and all of a sudden they heard a splash and looked, and there I was in the water. So I wrote in my autobiography in high school about this incident, and I said, and I've been splashing in the water ever since. So they did pull on the rope, and I made it. The end.
I don't suppose that prompted any authorities to investigate the household.
No, not in
Not in those days.
not in those days. I mean, nobody saw it except these Sunday school, Bible school teachers, and my mom and dad. So my dad was a pastor, so I'm sure nobody would have ever suspected him of child neglect or child abuse. Back in the day when pastors were sacred, can do no evil type thing. Are we done?
Yeah, I think this all started because we wanted to hear about the time a duck came after you, Ruby.
Ruby's. Elmer's favorite duck.
Oh, I don't know. This is Ruby.
Aunt Mildred gave us the
Huh?
Aunt Mildred gave us the duck.
Oh, okay.
Ruby and Walter.
Yes.
Tell the story.
Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
We had this pet duck that our Aunt Mildred from Greenback, Virginia gave us. And it was a gorgeous, gorgeous mallard duck. But every time Rosa King, who was living with us since my mother died, Rosa King, my grandmother, or Ruby would go to the outhouse, this duck would come running out from under the house or wherever, and quack, quack, quack. I mean, he would go and he would pinch him on their legs. And Grandma would grab that duck by the neck and throw it, and it would turn around and it would come right back at her again. And she would grab him again. And a couple times like that, she'd finally make it to their outhouse. And Elmer and I thought it was just, he would not bother Elmer or I a particle. And we thought that looked so fun for him to chase Grandma and Ruby that we went and put on Grandma's dress and Ruby's dress, went out there and would go slowly sauntering toward the toilet. And that duck would not pay us the least bit of attention. Okay.
God, y'all were like 10 and 8 at the time?
Yeah.
9 and 11?
Oh, well,
This was before your mom?
no, it was while Grandma
Oh,
was
yeah.
living with us. So,
Okay, so
so
she
9
was-
and 12. Yeah.
Is that how you remember the duck, Ruby?
Yes, my lands. And how many pair of those beautiful old brown cotton stockings he'd tear. You know, those
That was what you needed, Uncle, was
Oh,
the
wow.
stockings.
tear the stockings off your legs.
Did you have to wear stockings every day?
Oh yes, with a harness on top of it. And
Like just
Daddy
for
used.
regular day wear, not for church, but you had pantyhose on every day?
No, they weren't pantyhose. They were stockings.
I don't know what that
And you had to wear a harness to hold them up. And Daddy used to sew the harness on the sewing machine and make them for me.
But they would be under her undergarment.
Yeah, they'd be under my undergarments.
Have to wear it too, Mimi?
No, but I got to tell you a story about what Ruby made me wear.
Why,
one
why did
time.
Ruby have to wear them? Because she was older?
Yeah, she was 10 years older by the
So then they
time.
had socks with elastic or something?
By the time I grew up, I don't remember having to wear stockings, but I probably did some. Maybe we had to wear white ones, but not those old brown ones you did.
Did they
Anyway.
have feet in them?
Yes.
They were just like, stockings.
They were not leggings, they were stockings.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
wear stockings. Are you calling them stockings because they're thicker than hose?
Yes. They're cotton,
Yes.
They're cotton, ribbed cotton, little brown things.
Like a tube sock?
No, they didn't have elastic on them. They were just came up here.
Had to hold it up by this.
Okay, I have to tell one more story.
Sounds
Okay, I got to tell you a story about Ruby and me.
Brown tube sock.
This is actually could go in weddings because this was going to Elmer and Esther's wedding in Pennsylvania. And our family was always late to everything, and we were usually buying things on the way to wherever we were going. And that was no exception when we were going to Elmer and Esther's wedding. And I remember, I think that's when we had this old blue Nash, and we used to have a kids' potty up in the back window, and people would go past us and be laughing and pointing, and we'd realize that we had the potty up in the window again. But anyway, that's beside the story. We were going to Pennsylvania to Elmer and Esther's wedding, and somebody was missing socks. I think it was Harry. We had to stop and get socks for somebody. And but anyway, I remember the dress I was wearing. I was 8 years old, and Ruby said my stomach stuck out, and I had to wear a girdle. 8 years old.
I'm
Do you remember that,
Can you say
Ruby?
that again, Mimi?
Aunt Ruby told me that my belly stuck out in my dress, and I had to wear a girdle. 8 years old. Remember that, Ruby?
You want me to tell the truth?
Well, I didn't know if I just have a warped memory, but that's what I remember. And so I don't know where I got a girdle for an 8-year-old, but anyway, I had to wear this girdle so my belly didn't stick out. And we got in there late to the wedding. It's all mixed up with the girdle and the buying the stockings on the way and coming late. And so we had to march up the aisle of this church in Lebanon County or Lancaster County, where everybody is so prim and proper and on time and everything. We all filed up, and we had to sit on the relative side of Elmer's. And as we're coming in to sit down, the pastor is reading this thing about somebody in the Bible, and this woman covered her face with a whale instead of a veil.
Yes.
And I remember we almost died laughing. So here we were, not only filing in late in the church service, but cracking up when the man was talking
You're
about.
so Dutchified that a V sounded like a W. You know.
This lady covered herself with a whale. Okay. Anyway, I do appreciate Ruby. She always tried to make sure that I looked good. So I do appreciate that, because my mother didn't have time to worry about our personal appearances, and Ruby used to come braid our hairs and have us looking really nice.
Do you have a ribbon for your hair, or would that be too worldly?
I doubt it, but Ruby always braided our hair tight enough that it would stay and not get stribbly during the day. Yeah.
And Rosie would say that I made her look like a Chinese. I did it so tight that my eyes
Eyes back.
were pulled back.
Wait, why do you say your mom didn't care about your parents? Was that just because she was humble, or she had other things going on?
Well, when I said not care, I meant she didn't attend to, because she had all these kids, and
Right.
We just didn't have time for it probably, and it wasn't one of her priorities.
Right, right.
So y'all were preachers' kids, and were you at church on time for that? Like for your dad's sermons and being at church there?
We always set our clock 15 minutes ahead of time.
But we knew it was 15 minutes ahead.
That's exactly what we did in my home.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Did it work?
No, we knew it was 15 minutes behind.
I don't
What is
remember.
that mentality?
I don't remember being late that much in Holly Grove because we were just right here. But I remember Snow Hill. It was
I remember Snow Hill.
a long 30,
sorry.
40-minute drive, and that was very tedious to get there in time.
So Grandpa started at Holly Grove, and then he went to Snow Hill?
Right, when
Oh,
I was
yes.
12 years old.
I never went to Snow Hill. You know.
You didn't.
No, this is my church. All my growing up life. Holly
But we
Grove.
didn't go to this church when
No,
we came
because
back.
we honored Dad by going to his church. Shirley would
Why
love-
did
would
Grandpa
love to-
leave Holly Grove?
Because
That's a Mariana Purchase.
that's probably it's probably a multi-factor thing. Other people probably got ideas of it.
What's yours?
Mine is that times were changing, wedding rings were becoming the thing, and I don't know whatever else, but up to a certain point, the bishop, the preacher, and the deacon made all the decisions of church piety, and by this time, church councils were coming in, and so once church council finally became a feature, then certain members of the congregation who had a lot of family pull and what everything would move the church in a more liberal direction, which Dad objected to, and so things became more contentious over a period of time, and then he finally decided to leave and go to Snow Hill, which was a more conservative new church.
Well, they wanted him. They didn't have a pastor, so they
Yeah,
told him
that's
to
right.
be over there. Plus, he asked for he wanted 100% confidence vote.
Okay.
At
And-
Snow Hill.
No,
No,
at
Holly
Holly
Grove
Grove
here.
to stay there, and he didn't get it. I think AJ might know more.
You might.
So was this a hand showing, or it was a ballot, or what would have been the vote? Would have been like what? Do you have any idea?
I don't remember. I just know it upset my whole world because I was 12 years old, and
Yeah.
And it was more conservative then. Like you would have had to change how you dressed.
oh yeah. But the main thing is we had like 3 generations. They were all like my surrogate grandparents. And it was like I grew up in that church, and then all of a sudden we're going over to this other church, and my dad and mom were the older people there. It just didn't feel like a church family anymore. It was even independent of all the conservative, non-conservative issue. And
remember-
going a half hour, 45 minutes to church when we were just right down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it.
Did y'all turn around and kneel and stuff like that?
Yes.
At Holly Grove?
Yes.
Yes, we
Well,
did.
at one time.
Yes, we did it once.
If Dad was asking for 100% vote, I don't have. Well, I wasn't here. I was getting married at that time, and Dad told me that they were leaving Holly Grove and going to Snow Hill at our wedding time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What day was that recording?
Remember that too.
And that was pretty painful to you, Dad?
Well, yes. Good night. Those conservative folks over there.
I don't think he told us why necessarily.
Well, we knew the struggle had been going on for some time, and Dad, Dad had lived here for a year or two, maybe a year, and then had left here and gone to Gettysburg and was living in Gettysburg, and the church called him to come back to be preacher, to be minister here, and it was 100% of the congregation
At Holly Grove.
at Holly Grove wanted him to come be their pastor. Okay, so So that's why if he was asking for 100% vote, that would have been his reason. But I'm sure I can't imagine he was blind enough to think he would ever get it with some of the hostility that had gone on.
But there's a significant time difference between the time when he left to go to Holly Grove and when they called him to come back.
No, they didn't call him to come back here.
They called him to come back to Holly Grove?
Gettysburg.
No, he's in Gettysburg.
Well, and time frame, what years?
Well,
Were you
Elmer was a baby. Then he came back.
I wasn't born yet. I was born after he
Okay.
came back here.
so that's the first call he had to come.
Yes,
Okay.
that was the only call.
Was
And
he
then he-
preaching there in
Huh?
Gettysburg?
What's that?
Was he preaching in Gettysburg?
No, he was not a pastor. But I guess he was a Sunday school teacher or something for the year that he lived here. And then they lost their pastor here at Holly Grove, and they took a vote, and they got 100% of members, asking him to come be their pastor.
Wow.
So he came and was pastor for 25 years.
25 years.
Yeah.
And he was the principal at Snow Hill, right?
Yes. Well,
But
when he
that
went
was,
when he went over there. Yeah.
And he also started Holly Grove.
School.
What do you mean he started it?
Well, there was no Christian day school there at Holly Grove, and
At Snow Hill or Holly Grove?
either one.
Okay.
And
Started Snow Hill first, and then Holly Grove decided they would like also to do that. And the AC program, or whatever, ACE program, school program, required a pastor to be the principal or whatever. And so he had already been through the AC program, whatever it took to do that. I don't know if it was a trip to Texas or something and get indoctrinated on how to do this. So he came over and was on paper anyway, the principal of Holly Grove's new ACE school program.
were you going to say something more about that, Ruby?
except now Holly Grove, this year is the first year Snow Hill didn't have any students. So there was no school at Snow Hill this year, but Holly Grove had nearly 500 students.
So when did the family move back to Holly Grove? Nobody goes to Snow Hill now, right?
That is correct.
Daddy and Mom came back when they felt that they couldn't drive to Snow Hill every 3 times a week, because it'd be Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and Wednesday evening. So they came back too.
And it's not particularly a pretty story, but the way I understood it, Dad there was a young man in the church that Dad thought was qualified to become a new assistant pastor there
At Snow Hill?
at Snow Hill, and so they wound up anyway choosing this guy to be a pastor, and Dad thought he would be someone that would work as a junior partner, but this guy soon wanted to take over and run the show, and I think Dad was a bit disgruntled with that, and made it easy to leave eventually because of the direction that this new guy was taking the church to even a more, interestingly enough, to even a more conservative bent than what Dad had been.
Was his last name starting with a K also?
I think it started probably with a, I don't know.
It didn't start with a K.
Didn't start.
Why didn't it?
What was it?
Well, do you know who it was, Ruby?
James Kurtz?
Oh, yeah, maybe it did. Okay.
It was a K.
K or C?
K.
K.
Edit that out, Victor.
I'm gonna can bust in here and say anytime anything or anybody touches the table, it makes a
Oh,
really
I'm
loud
sorry.
noise.
Okay.
So like
Yeah.
tapping or
Yeah, okay.
and sliding the
Right.
microphone. I'm probably the only one that can hear that.
So Snow Hill went more conservative?
Yeah. And yeah, they left the conference and joined some 5 or 6 church member conference. It was just as conservative as it could be, you know.
Did the women sit on one side and the men on the
Sure,
other, or is that my
sure.
memory?
I don't know. Where's
Don't look
Miriam?
at.
Right here. Oh, not me. Well, we didn't sit that way when
I
we
know, I
went to
just
that
felt
church.
like we did. I think it's a story I made up.
Did I make up the story that Wally barfed on the back of somebody's head?
Dean, I was thinking the same
True
thing.
story.
That was Billy's pancakes.
Who can tell that story?
Wally, you want to start?
He had a bunch of pancakes.
I had a lot of grandma's pancakes.
Good number. Sausage.
Yeah, probably sausage gravy. And I was feeling sick. I probably got a little car sick. And
Talking about Jonah?
Yes.
no, I don't remember
Grandpa
that.
was preaching.
Yeah.
Grandpa was preaching, and I was starting to feel really bad, and so I stood up to leave
You're at Snow Hill Church.
at
correct?
Snow Hill. I stood up to leave, and as soon as I stood up, I exploded all over the poor guy in front of me.
That guy turned around with the saddest look on his face.
To this day, I thought he had Down syndrome, because that's what his face looked like, and that's how I remember it. And
And he plastered the wall on the
And
way out.
I ran out, vomiting the whole way. Grandpa didn't stop preaching, and
This'll be-
Mom cleaned up the walls while Grandpa preached.
I think Billy came and helped me too. I mean, there were a couple. Billy isn't here, is he?
He's cleaning up.
And-
He's a good cleaner upper.
So we got in our motor home and left. We didn't want to face anybody else that evening.
We didn't even wait till the end of the service.
No, we left.
But he was preaching about Jonah.
Yes,
He was. It was
and
crazy.
the whale spitting him.
Well, I spit him out.
Wally gave it a nice visual.
So, what years did we have the motor home?
I don't remember.
Cindy and Sandy were quite young.
They were infants, so 78.
What year did Columbus die?
79.
Okay, well, when we came down for that funeral, Cindy and Sandy were toddlers. Yeah, and Wally broke his arm on that expedition. And I remember that we had that motorhome. We took Grandpa and Grandma King back with us to Hickory because we had Wally in a cast and twins, and we were overwhelmed and needed help. And
That's not when one of the twins broke their
no,
collarbone.
no trip.
And then you got rid of it when you moved offices.
Yeah, when we were trying to gather our money all together to leave Griffin and start our own practice, we trying to get all our monies together. So we sold the motorhome at that point.
And that would have been what year?
About 71,
No,
I think, or
81.
2. 81 or 2.
81.
79 to 81?
You
Well,
got my handkerchief.
yeah, 81, but I still don't quite know when we got it. I was trying to figure it out from Columbus's year of death.
Was in November. No,
What year?
79, she said.
Oh,
October of 79.
So it's probably right after Cindy and Sandy were born until 81.
Yeah, we had it for 2 or 3
okay,
years.
okay, all right.
Can we shift gears and talk about Aunt Ruby and this friendly visitor she had recently?
How on earth did you get on that?
Because it's a great story, Ruby. When you hear it,
Some of us
about it.
haven't got to hear it.
Well,
Remember
I-
not to tap your hands on the table.
I have trouble sleeping at night, and I was up watching some animal show at about 2:30 in the morning on television. And all of a sudden, the door between the living room where the TV is and where I was came halfway closed. And I said, well, said to myself, that door has never been done that before. So I went back watching the show, and all of a sudden the door slammed shut. here it was 2:30 in the morning. And of course I was alone and didn't know what to do. And so I got up and went over and picked it. Oh, there was a walker behind the door, folded up. And I thought, well, what disturbed that? There wasn't a rocket going up from Wallops or anything. So I knew that wasn't it. But I still couldn't figure it out. So anyway, I went behind the door and picked up the walker and put it back where it was and pushed the door back. Still never suspecting anything out of the ordinary happening. And all of a sudden, one of the vases or flower pots fell off the windowsill. Well, I never saw anything push it off or anything, and it wasn't near the edge. I couldn't figure out what on earth was going on then. And then I got up, picked the flower pot up and put it back on it didn't break, and put it back on the windowsill. And then I was sitting there and I saw some movement out of the corner of my eye, and here was a snake going along the windowsill. And it was a big snake. It was 5 foot tall, 5 foot long, and I couldn't get my hands around him. He was that big. He had a full tummy. Anyway, I didn't know how I was going to catch him there on the windowsill without knocking some more flower pots over or something. So I figured I'd let him go and see where he went and what happened. And so I kept following him, and he went over and crawled up on the air conditioning in the window, and he put his tongue out all over the window, feeling with his tongue. I still have the slobber marks on the window. And then, so I got up and got in the other chair.
Were you scared at all?
No, not really. Oh, I was scared when things started, but after I saw the snake, no, I wasn't scared.
Did you think it was a ghost?
Well, I didn't know whether it was a ghost or the Lord coming for me or what was happening. But anyway, I went and sat in the other chair and watched. And he crawled down, I guess, and went on the floor because I couldn't see him. He was probably under the couch in the other chair that I had been sitting in. And so then he went over under the other couch toward the kitchen. And he crawled up on that thing, and he could crawl straight up the wall. I mean, that far up his head was from the back of the sofa. And I thought, well, he's going to turn the light off in here. Then I will be in the dark. So then he crawled up on the picture frames on the wall, every one of them, and tipped them sideways and stuff. And then he crawled up on Ben's deer head and wrapped himself all around the antlers of that deer head. Well, I knew I couldn't get him from there and pull him down because I'd pull the deer down. Then he went on over across the top of the TV and across the lamp and turned its shade sideways. And then he crawled up on a picture and then went across the door that goes to the upstairs. And he, as he's crawling across there, he fell. And there's a hanger to hang clothes on behind that door. And he fell and caught himself on that. But after a while, he got himself together and then crawled up on a mirror and some stuff I had there on the wall. And then crawled up over the window toward the porch.
This is for 2:30. I mean, is this like an hour or?
Yes, it was over an hour till I caught the thing.
Okay.
Then he he went across the top of the window. And then I heard the bookcase open and something fall out of the bookcase. Well, that crazy thing had opened the door to the bookcase, and he crawled in there and knocked one of my trinkets down. And then he went back across the window then and came down under the couch and came out toward me in the other chair. And I said, I don't want him to go in my bedroom. I don't like him that much. So I said, I got to do something and do it quick before he gets in the kitchen and gets in my bedroom or gets under the refrigerator, under the stove. So I got a pillowcase that was on the back of the couch, and I threw it over him. Well, of course, he slithered right out from under that. And I had tried to grab him through the pillowcase, and of course, he just wiggled and wrangled. And
Ruby, are you grabbing behind his head, or what part of him are you grabbing?
anything I could get.
Well, I don't know. I would do it grabbing a snake.
And so he went out from under the pillowcase, and I said, well, I've got to get him because he's heading toward the refrigerator. So I grabbed him with both hands. Of course, my hands wouldn't go around him completely. He was that big around. But I grabbed him and held on to him, and I took my foot and opened the pillowcase and stuck his head in the pillowcase. And then I grabbed the pillowcase and shook him on in there. Then I tied it in a double knot, made sure there were no tears in the seams or anything that he could push himself out. And I put him out on the trash can in the back porch. And I knew Billy'd bring me groceries on the next day, so he could get rid of it for me. So.
Billy testifies that he found the snake.
What?
This wasn't a dream.
No, my lands.
Bill told me
Bill
that he found
testified the snake was in the trash can.
So where did you want to put the snake? Where did you want Billy to put it?
Under the house
Why?
to
eat your mice.
eat my mice, yeah.
Of course.
How did you know it wasn't poisonous?
Oh, because I could see it was
It was a
black
big old
snake.
black snake.
Yeah, it was not a poison. Now, if it had been black water moccasin, it would have had a white mouth and
But you could
stuff.
see that at 2:30 in the morning?
Well, I had the television on, and then when I got up and fixed the door, I turned the light on in the living room because I didn't want to be in the dark. And then, so I tied it in a knot and put it in the trash can and made sure the trash can lid was locked.
This was just like a month ago.
Yeah.
Did anybody take pictures of the snake afterwards?
No, I said I was so aggravated that I didn't. But when I got a hold of him, when I was making sure he was going in, I could see that he was taller than I was. He was longer than I am tall, and I'm 5 foot since I broke my back.
Well, this is Walter talking. She's giving us this story as Cindy and Bosky and Greg and Asha, Ari. We're all sitting in our house in our living room. And so we're sitting there imagining, as she tells the story, looking at the pictures as this snake is supposedly moving over the room. And Cindy is sitting alongside of me on the couch, and she's talking about this thing being up above the curtains where we're sitting. And about that, and Cindy is nursing her baby. And about that time, the baby moves her hand down across his hand down across her arm. She yelled and jumped up out of the couch, and the baby was terrified by the mother being so frightened.
Baby thinks
So that's another part of the story.
Grandpa, when she told me that, I thought that you had probably reached around.
I
to
know.
Everybody thought
did.
that.
Yes,
I did.
I did too.
I would not be out of character.
No.
So that's a snake story.
Well, I still think about the snake story a little bit more, and so then what Billy did with the snake.
What
Did he
did
put
he
it
do?
back underneath the house, or did he take it off and...
I don't know what he did. I didn't ask him what he did. But
He said he turned it loose outside there.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I had a black snake under my house for over 5 years, and I didn't have any mice in the house.
Also, part of the story is that Ruby is far more afraid of a spider than she is of a snake. If you can believe that.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, I know.
Another thing, Ruby knew she scared the snake so bad he wouldn't be back, so she didn't mind him being under the house.
So good.
Yeah. So how was that snake going to fit under the fridge if it was 6 inches across?
Well,
They can get very small, Wally.
yeah, they can squeeze. If they can get their head through something, they can usually squeeze their body through.
I mean, he was really productive, though. That's the part that I'm like, he was all over that house.
All over that one room.
And you didn't call anybody in all that process.
No, I said it wouldn't do any good to call AJ's because they go to bed at 8:30. 9:30. And yeah, it was past their bedtime, and I surely didn't want to call Bill from Fruitland,
Yeah.
30 some miles away. So,
When the door was opening, you didn't think about calling 911?
what would that do? They'd be probably more scared than I was.
What if there was somebody in there, though?
I mean, you didn't know it was a snake
You
at
know
that
it
point.
was a
Oh,
snake
I didn't
or
know
a
what
man
it-
or a Holy Ghost.
I didn't know what it was.
Did you tell him the story about how just a couple days before a fugitive was wanted? They were out. Just
Where's
a couple
Graham?
days before that, they had got escaped some really dangerous criminal, and they found him hiding down there not far from Ruby. And so this was a couple days later, and so she was still spooked about this guy that they found down there in the old. Not in the old Presbyterian ruins before you get to the
burned down place.
Well, there's Bill, and go get the trees from him if you have any
Well,
questions.
there's Graham's, yeah.
She was so scared, she just got up and closed the door.
Yeah.
Dear.
But
They found the criminal Peyton wants to know.
Yeah, they found him.
they found him hiding in the old Episcopal ruins there.
Where the one that was struck by lightning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all haven't seen that, have you? We need to go by that.
We'll go by it tomorrow on the
Oh,
bus.
we will go on the boat, on the bus.
Is that a true story that the preacher said, if I'm lying, strike me down?
I don't know.
Probably not.
I don't know.
Good story.
That's what I was always told.
I think he was killed by lightning.
The preacher was?
I think so.
Really?
That's what I understand.
On that Sunday, or whatever
The
that
brother-
day.
We need to find that out.
He
for
got
our,
struck by the lightning that set the church on fire.
That's what I understand.
Wow.
But that could be legend. We probably, I don't know who we.
How many? Wait, what's this?
But that, it's a cool building. I mean, it's always been cool. When
50
nobody ever
years,
takes it
60
down.
years, 70.
I don't know. It was in ruins as long as I can remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, it's raining again?
Yep.
So that thing burned down 80 years ago?
Sure.
When I was a kid, brothers would come home and get ready to go fishing. I can remember standing there and just hoping beyond hope that I'd somehow be able to get to go fishing, and knowing I shouldn't even ask. Watching the boat go out the driveway and going around the side of the house, I had my tears. But I can also remember Dad holding out his arm and saying, anybody that can walk underneath my arm without hitting it can go fishing. And so we'd have 7 kids on the boat. I had a neighbor one time tell me that when your dad came out fishing, I had to leave. If I was out there fishing, I'd have to leave because I just get sick watching these kids just run all over the boat, hanging off the boat, fishing. It would look way too dangerous. I couldn't handle it.